Some cars don't just move, they haunt you. The way they look, the way they sound, the way they capture a moment in history. And few classics have done it like this one. The Ferrari Dino 246 GT E-Series. A car that wasn't born to be just another Ferrari, it was born to redefine what a sports car could be. Every great car has a story, but the Dino 246 GT's story is one of love, tragedy, and defiance. It's the tale of a son's dream, a father's reluctance, and a car that would go on to carve its own immortal place in the world of classic cars. The name Dino doesn't come from a marketing team or a random Italian word. It comes from Alfredo Dino Ferrari, the only legitimate son of Enzo Ferrari. Dino was a gifted young engineer, deeply passionate about engines, and he was working on a revolutionary V6 design in the 1950s. Tragically, Dino fell ill with muscular dystrophy and passed away at just 24 years old in 1956. But before his death, he shared his vision of a lightweight, compact V6 engine that could power both racing cars and sports cars. That unfinished dream became the foundation of this machine. For Enzo Ferrari, the Dino was personal. But here's the twist. Enzo was stubborn. He believed Ferrari road cars should be powered by nothing less than a V12. He thought the V6 wasn't worthy of carrying the Ferrari badge. So when the Dino finally came to life, it didn't say Ferrari anywhere on the body. Instead, it bore only the script logo Dino. To some buyers, that was a disappointment. To others, it was a statement. This was something different, something pure. Now, why did Ferrari even need a car like this? By the late 1960s, the world of sports cars was changing fast. Porsche was dominating with the 911S, agile and relatively affordable. Lamborghini had shocked the world with the Miura, a mid-engine masterpiece. And Ferrari? Ferrari needed to adapt. They couldn't rely only on massive V12 Grand Tourers for wealthy clients. They needed a car that was lighter, more accessible, and built to rival the rising competition in the mid-engine sports car segment. That's where the Dino 206 GT first appeared in 1968, a small aluminum-bodied coupe with a 2.0-liter V6. It was gorgeous, nimble, but produced in very limited numbers. It was a proof of concept. Customers loved the design and the way it drove, but they wanted more power, more refinement, and more usability. The answer arrived in 1969 with the Dino 246 GT. This was the evolution, and by 1973, the E-Series Dino 246 GT had become the most refined and polished version. What made the Dino different wasn't just its name or its engine, it was its philosophy. Unlike the big, intimidating Ferraris of the day, the Dino was approachable. It was built for the enthusiast who wanted a Ferrari experience but didn't need 12 cylinders or 180 miles per hour top speeds. It was a driver's car in the purest sense, a machine that made every corner, every downshift, every climb through the revs feel alive. But developing the Dino 246 wasn't easy. Ferrari's engineers had to transition from the lightweight aluminum body of the 206 to a more durable steel body, which meant more weight. To compensate, they increased displacement to 2.4 liters, delivering stronger torque and everyday usability. They had to balance costs carefully because this wasn't meant to be a super exclusive model. And then there was the US market. New safety and emissions laws meant extra modifications, heavier bumpers, different carburetor tuning, even detuned power outputs. It was a challenge to keep the Dino's spirit intact while making it road legal across different markets. And let's not forget the marketing challenge. How do you sell a Ferrari that isn't a Ferrari? For some buyers, the lack of the prancing horse badge was a deal-breaker. But for others, the Dino had an allure all its own. It wasn't about status, it was about passion. It was about honoring Dino Ferrari's vision. And it was about delivering an intoxicating driving experience that could stand toe-to-toe with a Porsche 911 or even nip at the heels of bigger exotics. By the time the 1973 E-Series arrived, the Dino had found its identity. With improved reliability, better detailing, and subtle refinements, it was no longer just Ferrari's experiment. It was a fully realized sports car that carried itself with confidence. And though it lived in the shadow of its V12 siblings in the 1970s, today we can look back and see it for what it truly was, a pioneer. The Dino was the first Ferrari-branded road car to embrace the mid-engine layout, a design philosophy that would go on to define Ferrari sports cars for decades. Without the Dino, there would be no 308, no 355, no mid-engine V8 Ferraris as we know them. The Dino walked so the icons that followed could run. And that's why this story matters. The Dino 246 GT isn't just another pretty classic car. It's the story of a son's dream, a father's gamble, and a company daring to do something new. It was built for enthusiasts, not just millionaires. And in the process, it became one of the most important sports cars of the 20th century. If Part 1 was about the story and soul of the Dino, Part 2 is about the machine itself. And here, the Ferrari Dino 246 GT E-Series is nothing short of a masterpiece in engineering. Let's start with what matters most, the engine. Sitting just behind the driver and passenger, mounted transversely, is a 2.4-liter 65-degree V6. On paper, it produced around 195 horsepower at 7,600 RPM, with torque in the range of 225 Newton-meters. By today's standards, that might not sound like a monster, but in the early 1970s, for a compact mid-engine sports car weighing just over 1,080 kilograms, it was more than enough to deliver breathtaking performance. What really makes this V6 special is its character. It wasn't a softened, commuter-friendly engine. It was derived from racing DNA, using double overhead cams and fed by triple Weber carburetors. The moment you turned the key, you weren't just starting an engine, you were waking up a piece of Ferrari racing history. The sound was sharp, metallic, almost urgent, and when you pushed it past 5,000 RPM, it transformed into that unmistakable wail that sends shivers down the spine of any car enthusiast.
Power went to the rear wheels through a 5-speed manual gearbox, and here's where the Dino really stands out. The gearbox wasn't just functional, it was precise, mechanical, with short throws that connected you directly to the car. Every shift felt deliberate, and combined with the classic Ferrari open-gated shifter, it gave you the sense of being part of the machinery, not just sitting behind it. Now let's talk about the chassis and handling, because this is where the Dino earned its reputation. The car used a tubular steel frame clothed in a steel body, which gave it more rigidity than the earlier 206 aluminum cars. That rigidity mattered when you were pushing the car through corners. The suspension setup was advanced for its time. Independent suspension all around, double wishbones, coil springs, telescopic dampers, and anti-roll bars. The result? A car that didn't just turn, it danced. Road testers in the 1970s often compared its agility to the Porsche 911S, and in many cases, the Dino was considered sharper and more predictable at the limit. Then there were the brakes, ventilated discs on all 4 corners, servo-assisted, providing the kind of stopping power you simply didn't expect from a car of that era. Combined with the lightweight body and mid-engine balance, the Dino gave drivers confidence to push harder than they could in heavier, front-engined Ferraris.
Performance figures varied depending on the test, but the Dino was consistently quick. 0 to 60 miles per hour came in around 6.5 seconds, and top speed hovered at 146 miles per hour, or 235 kilometers per hour. More importantly, the way it delivered that speed was intoxicating. The revs climbed like a race car, the gearbox begged to be worked, and the chassis rewarded smooth, committed driving. It wasn't about brute force, it was about finesse. By 1973, the Dino had reached its most mature form with the E-Series. Compared to the early L and M cars, the E-Series brought refinements that mattered: sturdier construction, improved cooling and fuel delivery, and little details like repositioned door locks and better interior fittings. Ferrari engineers had listened to owners and testers. The E-Series was about making the Dino not just a thrilling sports car, but a more livable one too. And let's not forget the variants. The 246 GT was the fixed-roof coupe, but in 1972, Ferrari introduced the 246 GTS, a Targa-style car with a removable roof panel. It kept the same mechanicals, the same engine, but added open-air drama. For some collectors today, the GTS is even more desirable. And then there was the rare chairs and flares option, Daytona-style bucket seats and slightly flared wheel arches, often paired with wider Campagnolo wheels. These little details made certain dynos even more special, and they're some of the most valuable examples in the market today. So what did it feel like to drive a Dino 246 GT back in 1973? Road testers described it as telepathic. The steering was unassisted, but light at speed, brimming with feedback. You could feel every grain of the road surface. The mid-engine balance meant the car rotated beautifully through corners. Lift slightly on entry, and the nose darted in. Squeeze the throttle mid-corner, and the rear end settled down with perfect composure. It didn't punish you for mistakes the way some early 911s could. It inspired confidence, and it encouraged you to push. This wasn't just a car you admired in a showroom. It was a car you wanted to drive every chance you got. On winding mountain passes, on fast European autobahns, or just on a Sunday morning blast, the Dino turned every drive into an event. And yet, this brilliance came with compromise. The Dino's steel body meant it wasn't as light as the earlier aluminum cars. Rust was an ever-present enemy, especially in damp climates. The power, while impressive for its time, couldn't match the thunderous V12s of the Ferrari 365 GTB4 Daytona. Some purists dismissed it as Ferrari light, but those who drove it knew better. They understood that the Dino wasn't about straight-line numbers, it was about connection. The Dino 246 GT, especially in its 1973 E-Series form, represented the perfect balance of style, performance, and usability. It was a driver's Ferrari, even if it didn't wear the badge. It showed the world that smaller engines and lighter cars could deliver just as much passion, maybe even more. And in doing so, it paved the way for every mid-engine V8 Ferrari that followed, from the 308 to the 488. When the last Dino 246 GT rolled off the production line in 1974, few could have predicted the cult status this car would one day achieve. At the time, it was respected, even loved, but it was still considered the junior Ferrari. Today, 5 decades later, the story is very different. The Dino isn't just respected, it's worshipped. Among car enthusiasts and collectors, the Dino 246 GT is now seen as one of the most beautiful cars Ferrari ever produced. Its proportions are timeless. The flowing curves, the low stance, the perfectly balanced lines that Pininfarina designed through Scaglietti's craftsmanship. It doesn't scream aggression like a 365 GTB4 Daytona. Instead, it seduces you with elegance. It's a car that proves sometimes less is more. In the collector car world, the Dino has gone from an affordable entry-level Ferrari to a blue-chip investment. In the 1980s and even 1990s, you could pick up a Dino for the price of a used Porsche 911. Some enthusiasts actually mocked the Dino back then, calling it the Ferrari for people who couldn't afford a real Ferrari. But as the years passed, tastes changed. Collectors began to value purity, design, and driving feel over just cylinder count. And suddenly, the Dino's brilliance came into focus. Today, a well-kept 1973 Dino 246 GT E-Series can command anywhere from $400,000 to over $500,000 at auction. Rare examples like the chairs and flares package with Daytona-style seats and flared arches can climb even higher, sometimes pushing toward $750,000. Certification from Ferrari Classiche, verifying originality and matching numbers, adds even more value. What was once the baby Ferrari is now a crown jewel in collections around the world. But it's not just about money. For many owners, the Dino represents something you can't put a price on: connection. Driving one today is like stepping back into an era when sports cars were raw, mechanical, and soulful. There are no driving aids, no electronic nannies, no computer filters between you and the road. Just a beautifully balanced chassis, a free-revving V6, and the purest driving feedback you can imagine. That's why enthusiasts call the Dino one of the most engaging classic sports cars ever built. Of course, owning one in the 21st century comes with challenges. The Dino's steel body is prone to rust, especially in hidden areas. Finding an untouched, rust-free car is rare and expensive. That's why detailed inspections, documentation, and restoration history are critical for buyers today. Originality is everything. Cars with matching engine and chassis numbers, unmodified interiors, and original paint codes command a premium. Maintenance requires dedication too. This isn't a car you drop off at your local mechanic. It demands specialists who know vintage Ferraris and who understand carburetors, ignition systems, and period-correct parts. Parts availability can be tricky, but thanks to a strong global community of Dino enthusiasts, there's a network of suppliers, clubs, and experts who keep these cars alive. And then there's the driving experience today. Even in a world of 700 horsepower supercars, the Dino still feels special. In fact, some would say it feels more special, because modern cars isolate you. The Dino doesn't. It talks to you. It makes 195 horsepower feel like 100 more, because it delivers every ounce of power with immediacy and character. The steering is alive. The gear changes are mechanical poetry. And that V6 howl, once dismissed by purists as unworthy of the Ferrari name, is now recognized as one of the sweetest sounds in the classic car world. Collectors also love the Dino for its role in Ferrari history. It was the first mid-engine road car Ferrari ever built, a design decision that went on to define Ferrari's DNA for decades. Without the Dino, there would be no Ferrari 308, 328, 355, or even modern mid-engine icons like the F8 Tributo. The Dino laid the foundation, and that makes it historically significant, not just beautiful. There are also the stories that surround these cars, the barn finds, the forgotten examples brought back to life, the Dinos that sat for decades in garages and suddenly re-emerged as time capsules. One Dino even raced at Le Mans in 1972, proving that its V6 could handle the world's toughest endurance test. These stories add to the mystique, fueling the legend with every rediscovery. So how do enthusiasts see the Dino today? It's more than a car. It's an icon of design, a symbol of passion, and a tribute to Dino Ferrari himself. It's no longer compared as less than a V12. Instead, it's celebrated for being exactly what it is, one of the greatest driving experiences of its time, and one of the most collectible Ferraris of the modern era. For anyone dreaming of owning one, the advice is clear. Buy the best example you can find, prioritize originality, and be ready to care for it like a piece of art. Because that's exactly what the Dino has become, rolling art. And while prices have soared, enthusiasts argue that driving a Dino, hearing that V6 echo through a canyon road, is priceless. In the end, the Dino 246 GT's legacy isn't about being the entry-level Ferrari. It's about proving that passion, balance, and beauty matter more than raw numbers. It's about a car that started life in the shadows only to rise as one of the brightest stars in the world of classic cars. And for those lucky enough to see one, touch one, or drive one, it's clear. The Dino isn't just a car, it's a legend. Cars like the 1973 Ferrari Dino 246 GT remind us why we're obsessed with classic Ferraris and vintage sports cars. It's not just the speed, it's the story, the design, and the passion that make them timeless collector cars. If this journey into the Dino's legacy inspired you, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next deep dive into the world of legendary machines. Go ahead and like this video if you love classic cars, and share it with fellow car enthusiasts who live and breathe this passion just like we do. I'd love to hear from you. What are your thoughts on the Dino 246 GT? Do you see it as the ultimate classic Ferrari or the perfect vintage sports car for true driving enthusiasts? And tell me in the comments, which iconic car should we explore next on the channel? This community is built by people who care about history, design, and the thrill of driving, so let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, keep the engine of passion alive, and I'll see you in the next ride.